Alrighty, we got two more movies left in the Apes franchise, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes comes out next weekend, so let's wrap this franchise up, starting with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which by July of this year will be celebrating its 10th anniversary. Yep, that's right, it came out 10 years ago, and this time around it is directed by Matt Reeves, who prior to this film made such films as Cloverfield, Let Me In, and even after this film he directed the next film, War for the Planet of the Apes, and we would all come to know him as the director of The Batman, and I believe he's directing the second one. But Dawn of the Planet of the Apes take place, I believe, 10 years after the events of Rise. Caesar and the rest of the apes have retreated to the forest in San Francisco. They have made a whole ape community, but the human race is increasingly declining due to the virus. And what's left of the humans within San Francisco, they come across the apes in the forest. They try to have peace with each other, but then we all know that doesn't last long. And so now a war rises between the apes and the humans. Now, like I said, this came out 10 years ago. I was really excited from when this movie came out, especially coming off of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which was a huge surprise to me. And so I came into this film with great anticipation. And despite the fact that I still prefer Rise of the Planet of the Apes over this film, and really out of this entire trilogy, a lot of people have said that Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is the best of the trilogy. And in truth, they're not wrong. There is a lot to love and admire in this film. But like I've said many times before, I prefer Rise just because of the whole origin aspect of it. And at the time when this came out, I loved it, but didn't love it as much as everybody else. But in context with the film that will follow after that, I might change my tune, and even now with more adult eyes, I still appreciate this movie more and more. I still prefer Rise, but with Rise, I can easily see why people think this is the best of the trilogy. Now, first off, Matthew Reeves, he's an excellent director. He's just one of those directors that, like, you give him a franchise and leave him be, he will elevate it to the best it can be. And he definitely did that with this film because Rupert Wright, he rebooted Planet of the Apes with Rise and elevated that film alone. But here, Matthew Reeves, he just takes it to a whole other level that we would come to expect with Planet of the Apes. But of course, I gotta talk about the visual effects within this film because it was a huge improvement over Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and it was already pretty good in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Just the motion capture, the photorealism just looks almost realistic to how apes look in real life. And we even get to see that from that very first shot where Caesar and his ape clan, they are hunting in the forest. And you see this look on Caesar's face like he has seen some shit. He is at war. He is protecting his apes by all means necessary. All the humans be damned, though he does have some sympathy for humans, but at the end of the day, he is all about the apes. Caesar has a family now, and of course you have his loyal companions like Maurice, Rocket, and of course, Koba. Woo, Koba. But like I said, the apes, they're living peacefully in the forest. They've made a whole ape colony, and they've had a few rules that they've set for themselves, which is ape not kill ape, apes together strong, knowledge is power. And before I continue with the rest of this review, gotta give Andy Serkis his flowers because it wasn't just the directors of these three films that elevate this franchise. It was also Caesar through his performance and his motion capture work. He brought this character of Caesar to a whole other level that made him complex, sympathetic, and you were just rooting for him. But Caesar's wife, Cornelia, is played by Judy Greer, 13 going on 30 reunion right there. He has his two sons, Blue Eyes, who is the oldest, and then you have his newborn son, Cornelius, reference to the older movies. But his oldest son, Rocket, and his best friend, Ash, who is played by Laramie Dockshaw, who I remember as Malik on Tyler Perry's House of Pain. They're wandering off in the forest, and then they come across this one human carver who is basically prejudiced against all the apes. He pulls a gun out on Ash and shoots him, but then the apes, they come in and they scare the humans off. And now the apes, they're trying to wonder what's the best course of action. But of course, Koba, he thinks they should basically annihilate them. But then Caesar, he just wants peace. And I just love the scene where Caesar, he straight up going to San Francisco. Now, the humans that are left in San Francisco is fucked. There's plants growing everywhere. It's a desolate area. And I also want to take a moment to highlight this opening intro during the opening credits, because it is just brilliant in itself. And it's also crazy how 10 years ago, a virus wiping out humanity seemed like an impossibility. But given how we are living in post-COVID, this intro does hit a little bit different. Meanwhile, you have Malcolm, played by Jason Clarke, and his wife, played by Kerry Russell, and his son, played by Cody Smith McPhee, who I know plays Nightcrawler in X-Men Apocalypse and X-Men Dark Phoenix. Then you also have Gary Oldman, who used to be mayor, and now he's just a general or whatever. He is there with Malcolm trying to help the human race survive, and they need to get to the stem that turns on all the lights. But back to the Apes real quick. They straight up go into San Francisco on their home turf, and they tell the humans straight up, "Apes do not want war, but will fight if we must." And I just love when Caesar speaks, because at this point, the apes, they're just mentally just advancing, almost to the point where they can speak almost whole sentences. But I like that they don't speak whole sentences. It just shows that, like, because if they just went into this movie just speaking straight up sentences, it'd just be like, all right, now this is getting a little silly. But I just like how it's just broken English. But I like it when the humans see Caesar talk for the first time, because you got to think, they only heard about what happened to the apes, but they never expected them to advance to the point where they are talking and they are just stunned. A group of humans led by Malcolm. And Malcolm, he tells them straight up, look, at the end of the day, we don't want no trouble. We don't want nothing to do with y'all. All we just want to do is just fix this dam so that we can get some lights. And Caesar does agree to that, but Koba doesn't. Now, Caesar, he's kind of the heart of this story, but Koba, he's the secondary. He's definitely the antagonist. He has gone full villain because Koba, he has been treated so horribly by the humans. So he is just angry and bitter. He thinks the humans are at some point going to attack the apes, but Caesar, with the foresight of like, no, just leave them alone and they won't fuck with us. But Koba, he's just too bitter and angry and forward thinking that he wants to annihilate the apes. Not only for the protection of apes, but essentially for himself, just so that he can be the dominant one. And it causes friction between him and Caesar, almost to the point where Caesar almost kills him. And I do like how we get moments sprinkled in where there's actual peace between the humans and the apes. The apes save the humans from when an avalanche happens. Caesar's son, Cornelius, they interact with Malcolm's wife and son, but then they find out that there's a gun nearby after the apes told them specifically, look, y'all can fix your dam. All we ask is there be no guns. And Carver's stupid ass had a gun. But Malcolm pleads with Caesar just one last time. Just let them do their work and they will leave. But under the condition of one day the apes will help, and Carver, yeah, he gotta go. But eventually they do get the lights up and going. But while all this is going on, Koba is getting recon on the humans. He sees that they all have guns, and so he doesn't tell Caesar. He brings a gun back to the ape colony and shoots Caesar. To which Koba leads all the apes to believe that it was the humans that shot Caesar. And at that point, that's when the apes, they attack the humans. And at that point, hashtag apes on horses. But what's better than apes on horses? Apes on horses with guns. But I'll do you even better than that. Apes in a tank. Like, I love that long take where Koba, he's getting into the tank and he actually uses it. But the apes attack the humans. But meanwhile, Caesar is still alive, so Malcolm and his family, they take Caesar back to his old home where Caesar used to live with Will, played by James Franco. We get some nostalgic moments here and there through some old footage. Caesar's son Blue Eyes does find them and pleads with Caesar to help him so that they can stop Koba. And Caesar can take his rightful place as the leader of the ape. Now, up until this point, I'm really loving this film, but I will say the parts in this movie, I'd say it's just the middle section, which is them trying to have peace and fixing the dam, and that's probably the weak point for me, but it's still brilliant to watch because it all leads up to this. And I just love the theme of this movie, which is how one bad ape and one bad human can screw things up for everybody, because that's really all it took. And an obligatory moment of acting for me came from Gary Oldman when they do get the lights on and he's charging his iPad and he's looking at a bunch of old pictures of when he was in the war and his sons that he ain't seen in a long time, and he just breaks down crying, which is a testament to how great of an actor Gary Oldman is. And I love Caesar's whole arc within this film because, as I've mentioned before, one thing I love about the character of Caesar, not just in this film, but in the other films, is that at the end of the day, Caesar knows that not all humans are bad, but because of nature, he has to be with the apes. And he really did try his hardest to have peace between the apes and the humans. But of course, that's just not going to happen, especially when you have a couple of bad apples on both sides that just disagree with each other. And when you have those bad apples, it will screw things up for everybody and will lead to all-out war. And that's how we got that final fight between Caesar and Koba. But of course, Caesar does win because he ultimately does have to kill Koba, even though there is the rule of ape not killing ape. But Koba, he was just a cancer to not just the ape side, to the human side. And yeah, Koba had to go because he was just too angry and bitter. And even the ending of the movie is a bit bittersweet because both Caesar and Malcolm, they come to an understanding. They wish things were a bit different, but hey, that's just how things went. And so Caesar, he's reunited with his family, and to me, the chef's kiss is when the movie opens up, a close up on Caesar's eyes, and then it zooms out and we see Caesar all angry and hearted. And then the movie ends with a close up of Caesar in his eyes, and he just has this, he's not angry anymore, he has this uncertainty. In the end, I really do love Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and don't get me wrong, but I still prefer Rise. But I still appreciate Dawn, especially now more than ever, particularly as a middle chapter of a trilogy, because Rise was basically all about the apes just getting smarter and rising over the humans. But here, this middle chapter is basically about how they're trying to achieve peace, but you have a couple of bad apples that just screws things up for everybody. And that goes into the next film, which is the conclusion, which I will get into at a later day. The visuals and motion capture within this film is just mind-blowing. Solid performances from Andy Serkis, Gary Oldman, Toby Kebbell, who plays Koba. The themes within this film elevates it to a whole other level, which is why a lot of people consider this the best of the trilogy. And of course, I'll never forget how I felt after seeing this film in the theater 10 years ago. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is my favorite within this trilogy, but I will definitely say Dawn is the best within this trilogy because Dawn of the Planet of the Apes gets the hands up emoji because it is for sure a masterpiece.